That was an award, or was it like you were selected to take
Yeah,
part?
selected from Sri Lanka. They looked at like who's in like sustainable fashion, ethical, sustainable platform.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so
and
yeah,
they
maybe we can talk a bit about that during the discussion. And I think we're already live on Facebook.
okay. But
Yeah.
how long is this session?
So it will go for around 40, 30, 40, 1
If I talk that
hour.
much, you meet me in person, I'll talk double the time. But
Yeah.
you on screen, I'll probably cut it in half. Michelle
Yeah.
will have to step in and then say something about her magazine.
No, let's see how it goes. So I think we're live on Facebook. So welcome to any of viewers joining us today for yet another episode of Designer Diaries. Thank you for joining us in the past few weeks. And today we have a well-known name in the fashion industry behind the well-known brand Buddhi Batiks. It's none other than Darshi Keerthisena. And before we get on to the discussion, let's watch a video from our partners, Informatics Institute of Technology. So, Informatics Institute of Technology, or commonly known as IIT, offers an MA in Fashion Business Management, which is the only fashion business master's offered in Southeast Asia, offered by the University of Westminster as an internal qualification. The University of Westminster is one of UK's top-ranking fashion schools. The graduates of the program range from very influential brands such as Marks and Spencer, Hermes, Prada, Louis Vuitton, and the lectures are conducted by academically and industry experienced eminent lecture panels. Students are given practical experience into business organizations through guest lectures, workshops, industry visits, and this course is made to equip you with the strategic decision making, leadership, and problem solving skills that you need to become an entrepreneurial and visionary fashion business leader of the future. It helps you to work closely with fashion industry professionals, role models, and mentors, and you will receive a relevant, well grounded, high quality education and skill base that will enable you to have a wider, clearer understanding of the business that you're already involved in. So that's a little bit about our sponsors for this series, Designer Diaries, and just to introduce our guest speaker for today, or our designer for today. She is Darshi Keerthisena, the name behind Buddhi Batiks, which is a well-known brand in our country. There's no need to introduce the brand to you. So just a little bit about her. She has a bachelor's honors in fashion and textile design from Central England University in Birmingham. She has a postgraduate course in teaching and learning art and design at the London College of Fashion, and she has worked in the corporate industry for over 12 years, if I'm not mistaken, for around 12 years, yes. So,
altogether.
Darshi, just to start with, tell us a little bit about Buddhi Batiks for those who've been living under a rock and may not be familiar with what it is.
Hi, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here today. So Buddhi Batiks started 50 years ago, actually. My parents started it even before I was born. It was quite actually a romantic story how they started. Since you have a
Okay.
little time, let me go into the story
Yeah,
because
that'd be
many know
interesting.
about it. So newly married couple, they wanted to create, my mother wanted to create a batik shirt for my father as a gift. So
Okay.
there was this batik artist in the village, they're just doing for fun some, pieces of batik. And she commissioned him to create a batik shirt for my father, but he didn't do it on time. So my mother was so upset and then told my father, well, your birthday present was not ready. And then newly married couple being them, father being an artist himself, he said, oh, okay, why don't we create a shirt then? Let's do it together. And they did it, and then it came out well. Um, and so on, because my father is a real entrepreneur. He sees opportunity in any situation and very positive thinker, the most positive thinker I know. Both of them together saw the opportunity and then they took it on and they started Buddhi Batiks 50 years ago for 2020 actually. And that's how it started. Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of grew up in the with Buddhi Batiks itself.
Yeah, so eventually later on, once I was born there, so it was my playground, like the backyard of our house was Buddhi Batiks.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and so every day after school, I would go there, play, learn what they're doing, looking at some great artisans. And we had some really good artists actually who used to do beautiful wall hangings and also
Mm-hmm.
clothes. And we also had at some point in the late 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, I was very young, and this graduate from Central St. Martin's working for us as a fashion designer. So I think that was one of my first exposure into fashion,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing them all work, creating beautiful textiles, creating beautiful garments, wall hangings, infusing the traditional craft into modern contemporary that time. Even today, you can see those designs are contemporary. Into this beautiful art was my first learning, really. So it was already in my soul to say so. And I always knew I wanted to do fashion and textile design as a career.
So you would say that that kind of added a value into your future experiences in building this brand further to what it is now, yeah?
Absolutely. That was my first learning, watching and learning practically from my parents and the teacher.
So how would you say did you familiarize yourself with the industry when you were younger? Did your parents allow you to get involved, and if so, how much?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used to create dolls' dresses, dogs' dresses. Dogs always used to get married in batik clothes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we used to have lots of stray dogs there because there were a lot of craft artisans there, and then they would whatever the lunch, and there's a lot of food around. Um, so there were a lot of stray dogs that we would adopt, and then um, so we used to create their wedding clothes. In batik, and I used to make dolls' clothes. Used to stitch. I used to do the batik and then actually make the garments, and so that was my first experience. And when it actually came to time for uni,
Mm-hmm.
I I studied languages and economics and geography in school. I did get selected to Columbia Uni, but then I always wanted to do fashion design, and it wasn't available at the time.
There wasn't anything else that you had in your mind?
No, I mean, they were all like second thoughts. Oh, well, should I do something else? Because I was so sure that I wanted to do fashion and textile design.
Yeah.
So it was almost like when you're too sure about something, you're like wondering, did I decide it too soon? You like think, okay, but no, that was definitely what I wanted to do. And then the only thing my parents asked was, is there a career in fashion design? I mean, obviously they had the batik business, but would you be better off doing a business management course, because then you can manage this business? Or is it better if you did something like interior design? Because there's definitely a career in that, because there were only a few fashion designers in Sri Lanka at that time. But I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Then they were like, okay, then you do that, study that to the fullest. So yeah.
So you said that you were 100% sure that you wanted to study fashion design, but a lot of people at the age of like when they come out of school, they're really not sure what they want to do. What would you tell to someone in that position that's not sure, okay, who's asking the very question that your parents asked, do I really have a career in this? Is there a future in this industry? What would you tell someone in that situation?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, as a young kid, somewhat, it's difficult to see the value proposition of your business or what you really want to be doing. So you have to kind of go with your gut instinct and what you enjoy doing as well. Yes, you need to look around what's out there also. But at that point, I think when you're 18, you do have to go with what you really like doing. What do you want to do for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
And then, after you study that, then you can look at the value proposition and do your research, because there's a lot of avenue, because I studied fashion and textile design, doesn't mean I had to be a fashion designer or a textile designer. There's textile technologist, or even an interior, maybe in some part of like interior fabrics, or I could have been fashion lecturer. There's a pattern maker, an expert master skills sewing person. There are a lot of avenues in that itself. So that's why you need to holistically look at altogether what you would enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And go with that.
So just checking, have you had any experience with lecturing at any institute, or have you just stayed away from that?
No, I did. So my first job after I graduated was at Brandix. A couple of months after I graduated, I started my first job as a product development home designer. And it was actually my bosses in Brandix were also, they took a risk in hiring me in a way, because they thought, oh, do we need a designer? Because it was pretty much early in the day of design careers in the garment apparel industry. Now there's a lot of opportunity, and there's so much value addition we give in Sri Lanka in fashion. But they thought out of the box, and they thought far. They actually thought ahead of time, I would say. And when they hired me, so I had the opportunity to learn from the bottom up practically. So that was excellent. And so meanwhile, I was doing that. Then University of Moratuwa had started a fashion design degree program in collaboration with London College of Fashion, which is super cool. I mean, for our government too, and Moratuwa University to collaborate like that. I think Dr. Lakdasmanando initiated that. Because that setup was amazing. There were lecturers from London College of Fashion, Central St. Martin's coming into Sri Lanka, teaching our kids And me as a visiting lecturer, I had that opportunity also to interact with them and learn from them.
Yeah.
So it was amazing, and that's why we do have such a great lot of fashion designers graduates, because that's where we started. And likes of other institutes like AOD and many others. I mean, AOD has a lot of visiting lecturers coming from abroad as well. So I used to lecture at AOD as well. Moratorium
Okay.
University and AOD were my regular visits those days. Yeah.
So you mentioned, I mean, it's a known fact that there aren't a lot of options when it comes to studying fashion design, but I'm sure the scope has kind of increased with
Absolutely.
time. So do you think there's more to come? There's more to go? What do you think?
Definitely. I mean, if you look at this, people recognizing the Made in Sri Lanka brand, or making products in Sri Lanka, not just stitching them, but also using that our skill of, this amazing apparel industry, which we export a lot of garments. Now, actually, the local designers having a little bit of a connection, and then being able to get their garments stitched within that, has opened a lot of doors and appreciation for made in Sri Lanka products. There are a lot of really amazingly talented new designers right now, currently, using a lot of Sri Lankan inspiration and opportunities coming up. And I think there's a lot more, because it's not just clothing, right? There's a lot around the industry. There's a lot of textile based products, or fashion related. So yeah, there's definitely still a lot more opportunity.
Yeah. And how was your experience studying abroad in the UK, right?
I learned a lot, not just in the classroom, but also just being independent, being responsible, just generally, just growing up, really. So that was great experience. Yeah.
And after you studied your bachelor's, you also went on to study for your postgraduate course. How important do you think is a postgraduate or a master's course for a fashion designer or
So
someone in this industry?
I must say, actually, before you say, I never completed that. I never handed in my dissertation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I followed it to the end. I wrote part of my dissertation, never finished it. And that opportunity was given to me to do that postgraduate diploma with London College of Fashion as
Okay.
a design lecturer at Morato University. It was the Morato University who gave me that opportunity. Of course,
Okay.
I had to spend for my own lodging and everything else. Other than they did sponsor me on the actual course, because
Okay.
at that time I was a regular visiting lecturer, and then they sent another, I think, 10 lecturers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did that, which was distant learning, and at the end 3 months at the campus, which was excellent. And then they did give me time to complete it. I was able to take time off at
Mm-hmm.
that time. I think there was something that happened in life that I had to take that time off. Then they said, you can do it, come back to it in a year or two. But all the lecturers had changed, everybody had changed. I moved on to other things. And
Yeah, life
that
happens
was one
basically.
regret, that I never completed it, but I did
Okay.
learn a lot from that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So would you recommend a master's or a postgraduate course to someone in the industry, starting in the industry, or would you recommend that they wait a bit, test the waters, and then get into it?
So I do definitely recommend, because through this, because it wasn't just fashion designing. So fashion design, I've learned throughout my journey. By that time, working at Brandix, and then at that time I was still at Brandix, I think. I had learned, and I just started Buddhi Batiks, getting into Buddhi Batiks also. So there were like practical experiences, but being able to study something else related to fashion, teaching art and design, which really opened up a huge different area for me, which later on helped even through my business, working with other people and different things. So yeah, definitely, if you have the opportunity, definitely explore the possibilities of going into like a different area of your subject, specializing in a different area, so that you learn something else.
Yeah. And working in the garment industry, I think the lighting here is getting a little weird. Working in the garment industry, how did that help you? And how do you think that could contribute to the experience of a fashion designer?
Wow, I learned so much. I'm always grateful for the opportunities at Brandix and also at MAS later on, um, because um, it opened up a whole big world to me. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
real industry that I was just playing with craft, batik, and then the real world out there was really through the apparel industry in Sri Lanka that I learned about that. So the experience in really um, um, how things are done in the industry. So even if you're a designer, it would definitely be useful for you to be a product developer or a garment tech, learn different angles of your product. So I did learn that. Yeah.
And just tell me a little bit about, you won a lot of awards and you've had a lot of different experiences as a fashion designer. So tell me about all those kind of experiences in your journey in this industry.
The highlight moment was being invited through Eco Age, which is a sustainability ethical fashion platform in the UK, headed by founder Livia Firth. They, I guess, they did their research, as well as somebody very special recommended me, BB Russell, a designer, very well known, very well respected designer in the
Okay.
ethical fashion arena. So she, a Bangladeshi designer, she recommended me as well. Later on, I found out to represent Sri Lanka, and Livia's team said they did the research on social media online and found out about our brand also. Invited me to represent Sri Lanka and have a garment exhibited in the Buckingham Palace. So where all the fashions, who's who, were there, all the magazine editors, fashion magazine editors, to the top supermodels, to all the influential people in the industry. So that was my moment.
Was that like your aha moment? Like, oh
Yeah, it
wow.
was like, no, it was more like, I'm here. Okay. It
So
was,
was this at the very start of your
no, it was just about 3 years ago. Actually, 3 years
okay.
ago around this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they have researched on your social media and things like that as well, yeah?
Yeah, that's what.
So how important do you think is um, having some knowledge of digital media and social media and marketing and even like business management skills? How important are those skills for a fashion designer?
So social media, I mean, my story earlier, actually that connects to it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's where they did, I mean, someone did the research, and I do get a lot of inquiries through social media.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think if you need to be known to get yourself out there, it's very important that you are active on social media. Your brand is active.
Yeah.
Um, so I think the kids nowadays, they grow up with it. So I think they are all quite savvy on social media, and they know what they have to do. So yeah, and they know
Yeah.
it's important as well.
And also, when you're in this industry, especially when you have your own brand or your own business, it's not just about designing, it's also about managing your business and the different elements of it. So, how important do you think are those skills?
I think it is very important, because if you don't manage, like, I mean, if it's a business, then you need to make sure that when you're creating something as a designer, sometimes you just lose track and you just want to create it, make it perfect more, and you need to stop somewhere, and then you need to make it a commercial product. So that kind of managing your production or the samples or the whole process, that is very important. I have seen very often there are, sometimes family members or friends get together, do it. Or some people are just savvy at both.
Yeah.
Yes, a design as well as good at managing. So, whatever works for you. But I think it's important there is a person who is doing that managing part as well, if you want it to be business, yeah.
Yeah. And so let's just talk a little bit about your business, about Buddhi Batiks. What is the process like, the design process and the different aspects, the different elements, the different things that go behind final product?
Sometimes it's a fabric textile design business, as well as a garment. So there are very clear cut two different elements here, because we don't just go and buy a fabric that is already designed and then make the garment. We actually we buy a fabric that is plain, or PFD, prepared for dyeing, which is most often off-white or white. And that's our canvas to create our art. So that's why I always hashtag our products wearable art, because eventually it's an artisan who's drawing on it and creating a piece of art. You say, even if they try to do the same thing twice, there is differences. Even if you draw it on a piece of paper and then trace it onto the fabric, still it's hand done. So there is a difference in each piece. So that is why it is a piece of wearable. I tag it as that. And also,
yeah, just give me a second.
Yep. Are we still on live?
Yes, we are. So sorry for that. So
Yeah, so
tell me
the
about
other part of it is the actual garment part. So then once you have the fabric, most often we create the fabric for the garment that we have intended. So, let it be an all over design or a placement on a, something design here, whatever it is, then we create it to match that. So there's two parts of our product. So it's quite a long process. First you hand batik it. Can you hear me? I can't
Yes,
hear
I
you.
can hear you. Sorry. So also, how involved do you, as the owner and as a pioneer behind the Batiks, how involved do you get in the different aspects of the final outcome?
I I do get quite a lot involved, especially now that I left consulting MAS in 2020 January. Came out with all these big hopes because just before the pandemic I left, and then went into like, okay, let's do this bridal, because it was very interested in the bridal, because it was quite interesting area for us. And so going back to, you asked me how involved am I. So now that I am focused on just Buddhi Batiks, I am pretty much involved in every aspect of it.
Okay. And what kind of value addition do you think that you've brought into the brand since you've taken over by your parents? And
So
how was the tell us a little bit about the transition from being your parents' child, baby, to yours?
So my parents, the days that they used to do Buddhi Batiks, that was actually a serious business. We were educated with the money that they made out of that business, because I and I both studied. He studied in New York, I studied in England, our higher studies, because it was a really good business. They did a great job. We learned from it a lot. However, with tourism collapse in the 80s, civil war, late 80s, all that really made them move on to, and actually my school also. So therefore, we moved to Colombo in end of beginning of 90s or late 80s, and then slowly they moved on to other businesses. So that's when Buddhi Batiks was very quiet throughout the 90s till I took over in like mid 2000, 2004, end of 2005. But before that, when they were doing actively, it was so contemporary, so much newness. They always, something I learned from them was innovation. They were always inventing innovation, doing something new, different. I haven't seen. They used to do batik bikinis in the 80s and export to Seychelles.
Oh, wow. Okay.
70s, actually, I think. I don't know. I've seen old catalogs and, heard all these stories, and pretty amazing. However, it was very quiet in the 90s and up until 2004, 2005, because they moved on to other things due to the reasons I told earlier. And I saw an opportunity in one of my travels, and I thought, this something I need to try out with different fabrics and different things. Like at that time, they weren't using silk satins and silk chiffons or things like that in the batik industry locally. And then I felt, why not? Because I, from my knowledge I had in textiles, I thought, let me experiment, and then, started doing that. And my parents said, why don't you take it over and do it? Because initially they wanted me to join the business when I came back after graduating. I was like, oh, no, I'm not working for the family business. I'm not working. And I wanted to actually make it on my own. I want to do something on my own. I'm glad I did that, because I learned a lot through working. And then I wasn't boss's daughter when I joined. I was somebody who, already had some knowledge in the business. So people did give me that respect as well when I joined eventually, after being
how important do you think that was?
I think very important, because you can't just be joining at the top, being the boss's daughter or boss's son. I don't think it's fair, because others have more knowledge who's been there, right? However, it depends where you join as well, at what level, but it always helps, even for yourself, for your own confidence, if you do have some knowledge in the industry already, and if you can bring a different angle to the whole business. Because by being in Brandix, by learning all these types of fabrics and washes and working with that time Finitex, the washing plant, and working with wash garments, all sorts of things that and different fabrics that really gave me a knowledge into like different angle into the batik business.
Yeah, bringing in maybe like an outsider's perspective as well, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's where I saw the opportunities also, what we could do, what newness I could bring. So then the time that I took over, my parents were like, I said, I like creating some batik. I want to create something that I'd like to wear, because there wasn't anything that I'd like to wear at that time. When my parents used to do, I used to love what they used to make, but not the time when they had moved on to other businesses.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, I'm going to make something that I'd like to wear. And then they were like, why don't you take over this business and then, change the name to whatever you like, do whatever you like, just do, which is very rare with my father, because he's very positive as well as possessive person, right? And I don't know, maybe he just felt he could trust me at that point. He said, just do it. I was like, why should I change this great name? You guys have done such an amazing job. So I'm not going to change the name. It was already a name that was successful, that is successful. And you had done way better than I have ever done, even now. So I kept the name, and that's how it started, really. So we started experimenting, and R&D, research and development, is huge for me even for now. Ongoing.
Do you have like a special team for that, or is it just you? Or?
No, the whole team, because it's like our mindset. We need to experiment. We need to try.
Be innovative.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the innovation part was something that I learned from my parents, and then we carried on and doing that, and we will not stop. That's where we, keep progressing, I guess, learning, doing something new. Let's do something different kind of attitude. Yeah.
So something that really, a term that really goes always along with batik is ethical fashion. So how important do you think is looking into the ethical factor or the sustainability factor in your business or in this industry? How important is that?
I think any industry, it should be the way industries work, not just in our industry. Or is it something special? No, it shouldn't be something special. It should be the way we do our business. Because for me, that is an angle that I learned from MAS. Sustainability was huge at Lineaqua, like, even using the wastewater, recycling it, using the natural light, that, instead of using extra electricity. So, there was a lot. And then, how they looked after their staff, that kind of thing was very important. That's something I really learned from them. So that made me think about what do we do with our wastewater? I mean, that was a project I started some years ago, because it's an expensive project, for a industry business like us. Whatever it is, we are not an industry, we are a small business. Our product might be high end, however, it's still a craft business. There's so many pieces that you can make. However, however much you want to, it's still, you have
limited.
to make it. Yeah, exactly. So for a small business, it's hard. And that was a project that we have, actually, I'm happy to say, we have completed building that water purifying system. Now we just have to now open it, experimenting on it now. But before Aurudu, we will have it going up and running. So that is one of my dreams actually coming into life. The other thing was we needed to go into sustainable dyes. we have found
So currently you use natural dyes, or I don't
you
have a lot of knowledge about the batik industry. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, no, it's not natural dyes because you have to natural dyes. You have to use dyes as a hot dye, and
Okay.
because you apply wax on a batik, and then it's a wax resist dye. So wherever you put, do you remember when we were kids used to draw with a I don't know in your time, but in my time we used to draw on a paper with a candlestick and then use food coloring to color. So
Okay.
whatever the resisted area, like whatever drawn with the candlestick, wouldn't
Okay.
take the dye. So same
Oh,
way,
okay.
you use a tool to apply the dye or a brush to apply the wax, and then you put the whole cloth in a dye bath. But if the dye was hot, then the wax will
Yeah.
melt. So that's
Yeah.
why you have to use cold dyes, and you
Okay.
can't. The natural dyes, the color doesn't come on well with a cold dye. It's very difficult. I mean, you can, but it's a long, difficult process, and the colors are really iffy. So they are not natural dyes, but we want to use dyes that are not harmful. So there, we have transitioned from that also to more sustainable dyes, and we are still struggling. So when we first met the batik minister, now that our country has a batik and textile minister,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much importance given to batik and handloom and textiles, which is fantastic. What we requested was this water purifying and standardizing of the raw materials, because
Okay.
you don't have raw materials that are like high standard, like industry certifications like Oceotex, which is like guaranteeing the safety. That kind of standard certification, if you don't have it, then it's really difficult, especially when it comes to exports and things. And also locally, for everybody, we should have that high quality products. So I think now this is where we are requesting the batik minister also to get involved and help us solve this problem. Yeah, I think he's on it.
So I think you already spoke about what the batik industry in Sri Lanka needs, but um, uh, to focus a little more on the water purification systems and on sustainability and so on and so forth. But as an industry, how I think this is one industry that has a lot of potential, especially to bring in a lot of income into the country as well. So, what other um, for someone getting into the industry and who wants to get involved in something like batik or ethical fashion, what do you think they should keep in mind?
Look at your value proposition, as in look at what you can bring in new. I mean, batik is still done in small quantities, so there is a lot of opportunity still locally as well. If you bring in something different into the market, what does the market need? What area is somebody not making batik office wear, or are they not making batik sportswear? Look at that area that somebody is not in. Bring in something new. I mean, that is where you should come in. That is where you should. That's how you should start thinking, because bring in something new, and that way you could really take your brand to a level like people will want it definitely. Oh, I can't find any of this office wear batik. Let's wear. Then there's something different. That is your USP, unique selling point. So that is one of the things you should think about. And also, I would say, also think about no business is going to jumpstart, make money from the beginning. So
Yeah.
if you're somebody thinking of starting a business, that you're already in a business and then moving, or rather if you're working somewhere and then want to move on to, save up a little bit of money, to sustain the business, so that you plan ahead a little bit ahead. You won't hit the ground running. I mean, you have to work ground running, so hit the ground running, but you won't start making immediately any revenue that you might have to invest that back. So think about that kind of areas, what is your unique USP, unique selling point, and what is your value proposition? What are you bringing to the market? What does the market want? Those are some things to think about. But also, it's just, you really have to believe in what you're going to sell. Because if you don't believe, nobody else will believe in that. But there are a lot of people, you will get a lot of support. You will get a lot of non-supporters as well, but there are more supporters if you're very determined about the product.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, reach out to people, different platforms. Yeah, and social media is a great way to start anything.
Also, Darshi, so when it comes to the batik industry, sometimes it's can go as something that is very cultural, and some people may tend to think that it's not very contemporary and that it's very traditional. But however, in the past few months, especially after the whole pandemic situation started, we've seen a lot of even like brides getting into choosing to have their bridal wear in batik. So how do you think that as an industry, how do you remain relevant?
How do I?
Remain relevant
Relevant.
with
Just keep
time.
doing something different. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody is doing something like us, we'll just move on to the next big thing. Like, create something better, something different, something. Look at which areas you could improve, which areas you could make the product different. Like, for example, if it's a bridal, what kind of look you could do for bridals, what kind of fabrics you could mix, what kind of silhouettes you could do. um, there's so much you can do. You just have to reinvent yourself. You can't feel like, oh, now it's done, like so many times, you can't do it. But like, do something a little bit different. You have to just be creative all the time and reinvent and innovate yourself. So that's where I said, like, you need to like what you're doing. If you do, then you're excited to do that. Also, oh, what can I do next? Oh wow, look at that. You always see an opportunity, or you see an inspiration, always. Yeah.
And so if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, like when you were just out of school, what kind of advice, what would you change? What kind of advice would you give yourself?
um yeah time
Did I
management.
put you on the spot there?
No, time management is a little, I struggle with time management actually a lot.
Okay.
So maybe I'd tell myself, think about, concentrate on your timelines a little bit more. Really, it's very important. If you don't, I mean, there were so many like you just have to hit it at the right point and then run with it. You can't procrastinate. You can't, okay, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it later, I can, nah, okay, let me think about it. No, you just have to make that decision and go with it. So yeah.
And what kind of advice would you give to someone aspiring to enter this industry or profession?
I think that I
Career.
already said that about, like,
Yeah,
think of
you did
that
actually.
position, yeah, and think of
Yeah.
yeah. So
So, if you had three words to describe this industry and how your journey has been so far, what would be those three words?
create, innovate, spot the opportunities, but that's two different opportunities. Innovate, create. I mean, so innovation is very important, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I think like you need to be able to take a risk with whatever decision that you make, that kind of thing as well. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
that's why
think
don't
that's,
procrastinate. Yeah.
yes,
Yes,
and don't
that's it.
procrastinate.
Don't procrastinate. Just go with it and believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, believe in yourself more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes together actually. Sometimes people procrastinate more because they don't have enough confidence in themselves. It's just, I'm not saying that is the only reason, but it's one of those reasons, you know.
Yeah.
You want, especially if you're a perfectionist and you want to do the best, so you
Yeah.
kind of wait till you're perfect to,
No, you
and
just have
then,
to make that decision and go with it. Because if you have to manage your time, then you have to make that decision, right?
yeah.
So that's why time management is very important in an industry like this, especially, or in any industry, actually.
Yeah, that's true. So actually, speaking of time, we've actually come to the end of this session.
Okay.
So thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share to anyone watching?
I think I said all that. So
Yeah.
I talked enough and then said a lot. But I hope you took something valuable from our chat, something
Yeah.
useful.
I'm sure our viewers were really able to get something out of this discussion. Thank you so much, Darshi. Again, we know that you're very busy and have a very tight schedule, but thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an honor and a pleasure hosting you. And thank you to our viewers for taking time off your Sunday evening to listen to us and engage in this discussion. We'll see you again at the next episode of Designer Diaries.
Thank you.